So let us welcome Sue to begin her talk, What's in the Way is the Way. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Thanks. And thanks, everyone. It's good to see you. You're very welcome. I was saying to Bronwyn earlier that I really like this little Zen saying that tells us that the thing that is getting in the way of our practice is the thing that we really need to practice with. And so I thought I would make it the topic of our talk tonight. But I just, as we were getting ready, I had a phone call with my sister who's just getting over COVID, and she's also just getting ready to go away to Queensland tomorrow, and all sorts of things are going wrong. The dog sitter's not working, and the dogs are going to pine while she's away, and she hasn't packed anything yet. And I'm trying to talk her through all of these problems, and I'm thinking to myself, why did I ever think I was a person who could help people with difficulties? Because certainly don't seem to be helping anyone here. But anyway, let's see how we go. All of us have difficulties and pressures and problems that get in the way of the life we'd like to have, and they usually get in the way of our practice too. So tonight I'd like to explore with you how we deal with those difficulties using the tools that we have available to us from the suttas and from Buddhist teachers of the past, and maybe from a yoga teacher or two. So just, if you wouldn't mind thinking for a moment about what's the kind of thing that gets in the way of your practice, your mindfulness, your happiness and freedom of heart and mind. Now, no doubt you're here because you believe that the teachings of the Buddha are useful. You believe that if you practice those teachings, you'd be happier, more peaceful. But sometimes, despite believing that, you just avoid practice, or you find it too difficult or actually painful. So what gets in the way for you? Just think about it for a minute or two, and maybe if you've got something to write with, you might like to write it down. Because I'm going to ask you to actually share it with the group. So does anyone want to start that off? Has anyone got a particular difficulty that they would like to get some ideas about?
I can kick things off, Sue.
Yes, thank you, Kynan.
I think for me, what comes to mind is having a lot of competing intentions and a lot of different things that I want to participate and engage in. And that can make even just finding a consistent time to practice tricky. Yeah, for me, it's been something I've been working with, and I love this approach of, what's in the way is what should be worked with. So yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. So let's leap right into that one, because I think it's a really universal difficulty. That there's the difficulty of finding the time for practice, and then there's the particularly when you don't have a regular schedule, and the difficulty in being consistent with it. I tried, when I was thinking about difficulties today, to think of where the Buddha had specifically taught about them. And I thought that lack of time would come up, because I think it's such a difficulty for everyone. And because the Buddha had a whole group of people he was teaching in the monks who had committed their whole lives to learning the practice, I don't think he ever said very much about finding the time, because clearly those monks had plenty of time. But he did often remind lay people that although they might think that they had plenty of time to get around to meditation, in fact, they would never know when death was going to strike. And so they had better make time for practice now. So all I can say is it has to be something that works for you. When you want to establish a new habit, I happen to have read some of the literature on establishing habits. And it's a good idea to tie the new habit that you want to make. So in this case, it could be your meditation practice, if that has been a bit erratic and you couldn't really describe it as a habit. So if you want to make it more consistent, it's a good idea to tie it to a habit that you already have, an existing habit that you practically never miss. Now, you might think you don't have too many habits like that, but we all make time to eat 2 or 3 times a day, usually. Most of us brush our teeth every day, although I have never forgotten that I was in the hospital with my mother once, and the patient in the next bed was an elderly man who was being interviewed by a doctor, and she asked him, and how often do you clean your teeth? And he said, oh, I don't ever clean my teeth. So I was so startled by that I've never forgotten it. But for most of us, we do clean our teeth every day. We eat every day. So there are some, basic things, and there may be more in your life, that you could tie the practice of meditation to. Perhaps you can give yourself, and I think the other thing about establishing habits is you have to start with something really doable and small, something that is so easy to achieve that you wouldn't not do it because it would take too long or be too difficult. So with the idea of tying it to a meal, you might then decide that you're going to do 10 minutes of practice before you start your meal. And you're going to hopefully carry that awareness into the meal. So that gives you a time of day, whatever meal would suit you the best. Doesn't have to be breakfast, doesn't have to be dinner, could be lunchtime, because for a lot of people with really busy schedules, lunchtime is kind of more doable than morning or evening. But you have to make it a pretty firm rule for yourself that 10 minutes, you start with that 10 minutes and you do it before you eat or before you do something else. I've got a friend who's much younger than me. She's a young mother of a couple of toddlers, and she works full time and she does a lot of voluntary work. And I'm just in awe of how much she does. And I know how difficult that juggling all those things can be when you've got very small children. So I asked her once, sorry, when do you meditate? And she said, on the bus, on the way to work. She said, I have a 30-minute commute. I get on at the beginning of the line, so usually I can find a seat, and that's when I meditate. And that's quite a difficult thing to do, to meditate on the bus. There's a lot going on. There's, people shoving and pushing and things, but she had made that her daily practice. So, Kynan, how does that sound? Are any of those ideas any use?
Yeah.
Have
no,
you
that's-
tried them and not found them useful?
Well, I guess that's really helpful advice, and it's really great to hear. I think in my situation, it's a bit more about trying to extend my practice. I want to be doing more, and I just find that I have a lot of other things that I also have committed to, or responsibilities, things that I value and that I want to do, and that eats up the time.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, I know. I'm not going to say you should get up earlier or go to bed later, because that's usually our reaction. I will just fit in more if I get up at 5 o'clock, and really, I think mostly we all need more sleep rather than less.
Sue, can I?
Yeah, by all means,
Yeah.
come in, KK.
Yeah, so I think I find that a lot of times there are the rocks that you mentioned. People see it as obstacles along the path because of the way in which we have been educated. In that we have been brought up to say that when you have a project, you set milestones, and this is what you like to do. So once you, so it creates a lot of expectations for ourselves, and we say, "Oh, look, we got to do this today. We got to do so much tomorrow," and that in itself becomes a difficulty. I believe that if you're walking along, or you have decided to follow the Buddha's path, the most important thing is you start off with understanding this is the direction I want to go. And if you need to meditate, if you find that there are difficulties in getting time or an opportunity to sit down, you meditate when you do other things. For example, if you're sweeping the floor, you're meditating.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things where, because meditation need not necessarily be just an action that you do in a particular place. It is what you do throughout the day, so that you are mindful and you are conscious of whatever you do. So that's from my perspective, in that I find a lot of people who talk about their hindrances, they refer to the 5 hindrances, and then they, "Oh, look, this is what's happened to me, and this is what happened to me." But it need not necessarily be just those. There are other things that pop up in that at that point in time, if you are not able to focus on what you need to do to keep on the path, and you drop off, actually that's fine. Because if you're aware that you have dropped off from the path, you come back on. And I think that's the way in which you walk around the rock.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Yes.
Okay. So I said my
Thank you,
bit.
KK. That was excellent contribution. So obviously, when your time for formal practice is limited, the thing to do is to extend that practice into all of the other daily activities: walking, cleaning, riding the bus, but particularly perhaps things, because when you mention it, Kynan, I was thinking of times when earlier in my life, when I was looking after my mother or looking after my children, and those are things that really, truly benefit from you being present. All of your interactions with others. So the more that we can bring that mindfulness into all of the actions of everyday life, I think the richer our practice will be and the more challenging it is for our practice. After all, it's a lot easier to be peaceful when no one's actually annoying you, but a lot more challenging if they are. So would anyone else like to throw a difficulty into the ring? Faye, thank you.
Basically, mine was just a little bit. I couldn't get, say I sit for a half hour, or I plan to sit for a half hour. Then I'll get to about the 15, 20-minute mark, and I'm going, is it half an hour yet? So to turn it back on and just focus on the breathing, that's where I sort of stumble over.
Well, Faye, I have to say, I think we all do that. I remember being with Sister Sudhira once, and someone said to her, Sister, how do you know that you've been meditating for half an hour or however long you've decided to meditate for? And she said, I look at my watch. So I think we get a feeling for how long we've been sitting for, and the more we do it, and so we get the feeling that we've been sitting for about 15 minutes, and you might check that and find out whether you're right or not, and then you go on, and then you come back. But because you've made an intention that you're going to sit for half an hour, you try and meet that goal that you've set for yourself. If you find that you're constantly looking at your watch, then that, I think, tells you that you might be a bit agitated about something, a bit anxious about something. Perhaps there's something coming up that you don't want to be late for, or something like that. And you can just notice that state of mild agitation or mild anxiety is present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need to do with it. However many times it comes up, you just notice it and name it to yourself.
Thank you for that reminder.
I use a timer to meditate with, and I have various timers set up, presets. And the one that I like to use the most has a bell every 5 minutes. And so I know if there's been 4 bells that I like to end my practice with loving kindness. So now is the time to move over to loving kindness practice, because we've got 10 minutes left before I'm going to get up and do something. So I don't think there's any, particular advantage in not knowing how long you've been sitting for.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Frank. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say hello, Sue.
Oh.
I hope you remember me.
Of course I remember you, Frank. Thank you. It's lovely to see you.
I just wanted to throw something in the ring about age. I had my 80th birthday, and I had some operations, hip, etc. And I found that I've been meditating 50 years. I always tried to be a good Buddhist, a good man. But with age, meditation is getting harder and harder, because you have family, grandchildren. And when you have this, you have problems. When you love, you'll have problems. So lately, get up 5, 6, whenever, do walking. My lounge is 70 steps. I'm very lucky, because the Buddha's path was exactly 17 steps. I read it somewhere by Prakantipalu. So instead of sitting down, I do the walking. because with age, I think it helps. It's much easier to walk than sit without movement.
Yes.
And the last real meditation I had, you won't believe this, I hope you will. A month ago, you were giving a direction about the 4 elements. It was my best meditation for years. You've done it really so well that I was so happy. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, Sue. And if you want to repeat it, I'll be in the first row to sit with you.
Oh, thank you, Frank. And thank you for bringing up walking meditation, because it's a real option for many people as a regular practice. I mean, most of us, we go on a retreat maybe and we do a bit of walking meditation at the retreat, but we don't necessarily do it every day. But it's something to consider, especially, as Frank said, if you're finding it difficult, painful, perhaps, to sit for long periods, which is often the case as we get older, then the walking meditation could be something that you try instead. And it's wonderful that you've got a living room that can accommodate 17 steps, Frank.
Yeah, it's very lucky.
Yeah. But I remember when I was teaching at the Buddhist Library, a regular group there was someone who had quite a severe back injury and he could not sit for any length of time, and walking practice was his regular daily practice. And so it can work for us in just exactly the same way that sitting practice can work. And even lying down practice can work. If you're in pain or in discomfort, consider lying down. I know Bhante Teja, who's done an awful lot of work with people in hospitals, will always say to someone who's sick that they should find the most comfortable position that they can, and lie back, prop themselves up with pillows, do whatever seems like it's going to work. When it's a young, healthy person, the advice is usually to sit or to walk, because lying down may result in you feeling more sleepy, less awake, and so it just becomes a difficulty. But when you're battling against all the kind of aches and pains of old age or the injuries that we've accumulated during life, then walking might be the best option. Lying down might be the best option. And because of those very aches and pains, you may not find that you're all that likely to go off to sleep. I went through a period once when I religiously checked my tracker to see whether walking meditation could contribute to my daily step count. And I have to tell you, it doesn't on the tracker that I was wearing. So I was pretty peeved about that. I thought for a minute there, I could accomplish 2 goals at the same time, but it didn't work. So is there anyone else who'd like to throw something into the ring?
Hi, Sue.
Yeah. Molly, yes.
Yes, I just want to share something. I've been reading this book. You all might not be able to see it. Okay, it's called
No, you have to tell us what it is.
A Guide to Cultivating Mindfulness in Everyday Life.
Right.
All right, it's by Sayadaw U Tejaniya. It is good in the sense he is saying that meditation, like Bhante has always told us, it's in everything that we do in our daily life. All right.
Yeah.
So one of the things he has done is he has taken one thing to be an object to be the object, all right? Because he teaches that it's awareness. Meditation is all basically an awareness and a focus, right? So if we are aware of what we are doing and our actions, our thoughts and all that, not about us as the I, but more of the perception, the sensations and all that,
Yeah.
then that become a fair way in meditation already. So he has taken for himself, he shared his experience as an object. For example, he said, and I think Bhante has told us that before too, we take one of the precepts, for example, or one of the noble paths, Eightfold Noble Path, or I say right speech. So through the day, you learn or you become aware, you make yourself aware of your speech throughout the day. So that in that way, that helps towards your mindfulness. All right. So that makes it is not easy. Right? It's not saying it's not it's something that you've got to build and you have to keep on practicing. But it helps because once you are aware and aware of it, how would I say, it has a chain effect into your other actions and your understanding of yourself and your focus. So I think that is quite good to say, pick an object, either right speech or right thought or whatever, and focus on that until you become aware of how your speech is, what you're going to say each time and every time, so that you become mindful and focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So, the other thing he said, I'll stop after this. The other thing he said is that when we go into meditation, we should not focus, or we should not we should not have expectations. We should not say, okay, what you have to be aware, what do you want? We do not say, what do I want from this meditation? You just meditate, you are just there for the moment, and you are aware of yourself, of what you're going through, but you do not have expectations and say that, okay, in meditation today, I expect and I expect to sit for 15 minutes without moving, blah, blah, blah. You don't, you just sit and that's that. Just aware of yourself sitting there. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Okay. Sign off.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of teachers will tell you too, because in terms of when you meditate, a lot of the problems start because the meditator, after 5 minutes, why am I not getting? Why am I so?
why am I not enlightened yet?
Yeah. So this is a huge roadblock when like Molly says, the expectation. Yeah. So I think that's really fundamentally, you should not, when you sit down to meditate, you clear your mind and you go where it needs to go.
Yeah.
But don't as I said earlier, don't set milestones and say, look, I want to do this, get it after 2 minutes, I want to get it after 5 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, when I'm finished, I should be up in fifth heaven. Never happens.
Thank you, KK, and thank you, Molly. I think it's a really useful technique to focus during the day on one aspect of the Eightfold Path, for instance, and just keep that aspect in the forefront of your mind, so that you notice how you're speaking, or it helps it's a kind of way of sustaining practice for much longer than perhaps the 20 minutes or the 30 minutes that you do actually sitting. And as for the idea of having goals for practice, that you will achieve, a certain jhana, for instance, a certain level of practice, Bhante Teja is always very dismissive of having those sorts of goals. And I can only say that, having meditated now for a very long time, that I think it's completely pointless to set those kinds of goals. I've had people say to me, I've reached the third jhana, or the fourth jhana, or whatever it is. I can never remember which one is which. But it seems to me that we see the benefits of meditation a long time after the event, if that makes sense. I can look back now and see how much, many, many years of meditation has changed me in ways that I will never go back from. We talk sometimes about seeing with the Dharma eye. Well, I think all those years of practice change our way of seeing, so that we become a different person through the practice. But we don't see it at the time because the changes are so small day to day that we don't notice them. But when we look back over a lifetime of practice, then we can see that we have become another person. So, anyone else want to throw in any difficulties? It's great.
So lovely to see you, Sue.
Thank
And
you, Jane.
I
Thanks.
just want to say, while I'm not a student of meditation, all that is being said rings so true with me in my everyday life. The idea of performing small tasks, and I suppose, I don't know whether I kind of zone out or not, but I love the simple tasks where that's all you're doing, so I don't know. Anyway, I can't say how lovely it is to see you and to see others, and I'm enjoying this seminar so much.
Oh, thank you, Jane. So you're like the Zen monk out there with the broom, sweeping the courtyard. That's your practice. Is that right?
I'm the caretaker in our little flats, and I do all the sweeping of the leaves and the tending to the weeds and so on. So yeah. Oh dear.
Yes, and for many people that's the best kind of practice.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, right, okay, yeah.
Because it gives you something real and useful to focus on. You can focus on the breath, but you can just as easily focus on the broom where you're sweeping.
Oh, right, okay. Well, thank you. I'll try and wind that into my my chores.
Yes. Yeah, I have had a lot of problems with one of the hindrances, and I've had problem with it all through my life, really, when it comes to meditation, and that is the hindrance that the Buddha calls sloth and torpor, which, or as I just think of it, as sleepiness, because I've never been a very good sleeper at nighttime. So often spend quite a lot of the night awake thinking about other things, reading, all the things you do in the middle of the night except sleep. And so for me, sitting down and consciously relaxing the body is an invitation to go to sleep. And if you suffer from this as well, the Buddha does actually suggest quite a few different things that you can do. But first of all, I think we need to look at for what reason are we sleepy? Are we genuinely tired? And I genuinely think that a lot of us are, because we're carrying lots of responsibilities. We're working, looking after family. It's hard to find the time, and we're just often worn out. And if you're tired, if you're genuinely tired, the Buddha's instructions are to take a rest. So sleep. if you need to. But then he's got other even more practical ones, more practical kinds of instructions for dealing with sleepiness. And one of them is don't meditate after your main meal of the day. Your body needs its energy at that time for digesting, and we all know how sleepy we can get, immediately after lunch. And that's why when you go on retreat and you have your main meal of the day at midday, we don't immediately sit down and practice again right after. That's the period of time for rest, for doing chores and so forth. If you've been inside all day and working away at a desk, then it may mean that you need to get outside, do a little bit of walking around and get some fresh air. In fact, walking might be your meditation practice of choice in that situation. Or maybe just opening a window and getting some fresh air in, splashing some water on your face, having a cup of tea. Those monks were pretty aware of the effects of caffeine. So a cup of tea is often recommended. But I think it's also important too that if your apathy or tiredness feels more mental than physical, if perhaps your feeling is that your meditation is not going anywhere, it's perhaps feels a bit pointless, then it might be helpful not just to treat the symptoms, but to actually go and talk with a teacher or a Dharma friend, because maybe you're suffering from one of the other hindrances, which is skeptical doubt, or you might just need a different kind of practice. Skeptical doubt is, I think, what's occurring to many practitioners in the Catholic Church at the moment, after all of these years of seeing such bad behaviour by priests and bishops. Many of the followers have stepped back and said, I still believe in the teachings of Christ, but I no longer believe in the structure of the church. And the Buddha also identified this as a hindrance that many people feel about, well, I don't know many people, but some people feel at different times about the practice. And particularly it arises when people lack confidence in the teacher or in the practice itself, when they feel like the practice is going nowhere, they can't see the point of it, and when they have concerns about how genuine the teacher is. The instruction for that is to really try to work with teachers that you have confidence in, while remembering at the same time that even the best teachers are human and they're going to have their moments when they don't live up to their own ideals. But do try and seek out people who inspire you, whether as Dharma friends or as teachers, and people that you can have confidence in.
Thanks very much for that, because yes, actually doubt and whether it's worth it seems to kind of cut across my intentions quite a bit. And actually what you said about we see the benefits of meditation a long time after the event, thank you for that, because that was quite inspiring, but also sort of reassuring, and like I wanted to go, oh, why, what happened, but I'll leave that with you. But yeah, the thing of why am I doing this? Is it worth it? And I think it probably is a bit mixed in with the torpor stuff as well. And also that tricky thing of you need energy and, you know, you need to be attached to the idea of doing meditation to actually do it. But then interestingly, you then have to be non-attached. Like it's kind of, I kind of find this an ongoing tension with Buddhism that I kind of, you know, to kind of do it, I sort of have to ignore it. But I do, you know, note that. But thank you for speaking about doubt, because yeah, I think that's a bit of a big one for me at the moment.
It is a very real one, and I've certainly found that, you know, walking out of a meditation session, I've often wondered, well, you know, did that do any good or not? But on the other hand, for a lot of my life, I used to meditate when I came home from work. Between walking in the, you know, I would walk straight in the door, say hello to the children, and then say, don't interrupt me for the next half hour unless it's a real emergency. And so it was a way of having a bit of quiet time between work and taking on the chaos of dinner and all of that kind of thing. So that there was always that small amount of benefit, even if the meditation kind of went badly, it was still half an hour of silence, which was quite a good thing. And that's all I can tell you really, is that looking back, I'm glad I did all those years of meditation, even though, you know, I didn't do many retreats. I didn't do long, you know, days and weeks of practice. My goal was to do half an hour a day and sometimes 20 minutes, you know, if I had a long work day or something like that. So I didn't have very high goals for myself, but that was enough to make a difference. And I think the other thing that makes a huge difference is the teaching itself. Because once you commit to the seeing with the Dharma eye, then it changes the way you see all kinds of things, and for the better. You have, in one sense, you have to take more responsibility for your own reactions, and in another sense, you take less responsibility for the rest of the world, because you know the rest of the world is imperfect and particularly impermanent. So whatever is upsetting you at the moment is likely to dissipate with time. And that's probably all I can say to encourage you.
Thank you, Sue.
Yes. So perhaps I could just bring together some of the bits and pieces that we've talked about in terms of dealing with difficulties, because I really want to do a particular meditation tonight, which reflects this way of dealing with difficulties. So I would say whatever the difficulty is, the first step is really just noticing it, noticing what is present, naming and acknowledging it. And that's the practice that I think I learned it from Jack Cornfield originally, and and Graham White's very big on this too, that the most important thing is to recognize and name what's happening. And that may be as simple as saying, I'm sleepy at the moment. But it's, I think, quite important to frame it in a way that says this particular quality is here at the moment, rather than identifying the quality as something that has taken over your whole being. So you might say, for instance, grief is something that I have had trouble with in the past. It has made me have difficulty focusing and concentrating for extended periods of time. So when you realise that what's going on here is not just that you've lost the ability to focus, but that you've lost it because grief is happening, then it's important to say, to yourself, grief has arrived at the moment. That's what's here at the moment. Rather than say something like, I will never get over this loss. Right? The grief is just something that is here at the moment and maybe gone in a little while. Same with anger. You might say to yourself, here's anger arising, even though I thought I'd let that particular thing go, but it's back again. No judgment, it's just what is here. So first of all, recognising and naming what's getting in the way of your practice, what your particular huge rock is. And then working on a few key ideas. First of all, acknowledging that everything is impermanent, and that means the particular feelings that are coming up as much as anything else. The situation that might be bothering you is going to be impermanent as well. This time next year, things may be completely different. 100 years, as they say, all new people. And then also worth noticing is, reminding yourself of, is that human consciousness is a flow. Thoughts and feelings and ideas and emotions are always arising and passing away. And what feels solid and stuck and immovable and permanent at the moment is what you happen to have focused your attention on right now. If you shift your attention to something more pleasant in the moment, the difficult feelings will fade into the background, even if only for a few minutes. Sometimes people think that grief or anger or skepticism is only real if it's sustained over a long period of time. And if you were to admit to yourself that your feelings come and go, flare up and die down again, it must mean that your grief or your anger is not real. And so they very consciously stoke their anger or their grief or their desire to prove to themselves and others that it's the real thing. I think you remember in the Victorian age, someone died, everyone wore black. And they wore black for a year, at least, just to remind everyone, and including themselves, that they were grieving. This kind of constantly having to be grieving or having to maintain anger or rage is, as they say, like taking poison and waiting for your enemy to die. It just prevents you from moving on with your life. So reminding ourselves that life is a flow, that everything is always in the process of arising and passing away, coming and going, can be very useful in dealing with hindrances. And then lastly, many difficulties can be helped by nourishing our feeling of connection with others. Recognizing that we're all trying to avoid pain and hold on to happiness. And that our lives are always supported by all of our connections with others. And just reminding yourself that we're all in this together can be genuinely helpful. Okay, do you have anything else that you want to offer before we go into meditation? Okay, so find your meditation position. Allow your eyes to close and just allow yourself to settle into your meditation posture. Choosing a position where you can be as comfortable as possible. Giving the weight of the body up to gravity. Allowing the body to be held and supported by whatever the body's resting on. And then taking some deep breaths. And as you breathe in, allowing the breath to sink deep down into the body. And then allowing it to flow all of the way out. Take several of these deep, slow, full breaths. And feel the way that the body relaxes on the out breath. Having a general sense of the whole body and the breathing in the whole body. Feeling the movements in the chest and in the back of the body and the sides of the body. Allowing the whole torso to expand on the in-breath and subside on the out-breath. Breathing in all directions. 360-degree breathing. And allowing your breathing to find its own natural rhythm. And then turning our attention to our thoughts, our thinking process. Seeing if we can allow our thoughts to come and go like clouds across a clear blue sky. So we're not suppressing our thinking, and nor are we getting carried away by our thinking. But we're using body awareness as an anchor for the mind. Coming back to the body and the breath again and again. And then also being aware of your emotional state. Getting a sense of the emotional weather that's presenting itself at this moment. Without any judgment. There's no particular way that you ought to feel. Just waking up to how you're feeling. And seeing this as the background weather to the practice. For this first stage of the practice, being aware is waking up to our full experience, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And just breathing with whatever is arising. Breathing in, breathing out, again and again and again. Just noticing any physical sensations, the sensations of moving with the breath. Noticing thoughts and letting them go. And noticing the feeling state of the mind. And now scanning through our awareness and paying particular attention to any resistance that might be present. If we've got any physical discomfort or physical pain, allowing this into awareness with a soft, kindly quality of attention. And breathing with this part of the body, with whatever part of the body is feeling the pain. As soon as we push away pain, we have contraction, tightness, and resistance. And this very often just makes the pain worse. But by having the courage to turn towards whatever is painful or difficult, rather than push it away, we soften the resistance. We soften the contraction. And we bring a little more ease into our experience. See if you can allow your breath to have a soothing quality. Making sure you let the out-breath go all the way out. And then the in-breath will naturally flow all the way in again. Just breathing with this beautiful quality of softness, of kindness, of warmth with the breath. And now turning our awareness or our attention to notice anything pleasant in our experience right now. Just noticing somewhere in the body where the sensations are pleasant. It doesn't have to be grand or big. It might just be a tingling somewhere, a warmth somewhere. Perhaps it's pleasant to feel the cushion supporting your back. Turn towards these feelings, these sensations, and let them fully into awareness and enjoy them. If there's a pleasant sound, maybe birds outside the room, see if you can let the sound come towards you so that your awareness doesn't fly outside the window to meet the sound. So we're staying centered and grounded, but opening our awareness to include anything pleasant. In this next stage of the meditation, we open our awareness still further to be aware of the flow of experience. So we're broadening our awareness. We're pulling back like a wide-angled lens on a camera. But this lens is a feeling lens. So the field of our awareness gets broader, more open. It includes the breath, the thoughts, anything pleasant, anything unpleasant. And we just breathe with this breadth of experience in the moment. As breathing is continually changing and flowing, noticing how all the other experiences are continually changing and flowing. Pain, which we might think of as being hard and static, when we look closely, we see that this too is always changing. A flow of different sensations. No 2 moments of pain exactly the same. So if you've got discomfort present, spend a few moments feeling inside its flowing, fluid nature. Notice arising and passing, arising and passing, and let it be without automatically contracting against it. And likewise with anything pleasant, let it be, enjoy it, without automatically clinging onto it or grasping after it. Just allowing it to arise and pass in this broad field of awareness. So it's as if we're resting back in the body, in the moment, and we're letting go of the tendency to cling onto the wanted and to push away the unwanted. But we're resting back with awareness, letting everything flow through the moment. And now we can broaden and open our awareness still further, as if the circumference of our awareness is expanding further still. you might like to bring to mind others who experience the same kind of difficulty that you do. That might be a person or several people you know in real life, or just the people that you know are out there experiencing the same kind of pain or difficulty that you do. You can bring them to mind in your imagination as a feeling, a memory, it doesn't matter. But allowing them into your awareness and recognizing that these people are your tribe. Even if they're half the world away, these are the ones who recognize and understand what it's like to experience the difficulties that you do. Their experience, broadly speaking, is very similar to your own. Like you, they're breathing. They're dealing with thoughts and emotions. Like you, they tend to cling on to anything pleasant and try to push away anything that's difficult or unpleasant. And then they have to deal with all the consequences that flow from those habits. And all these tendencies are universal. It's what we all do. So let's drop beneath the difference and rest in awareness of all we have in common as we bring to mind those people who share the same difficulties that we do. We can imagine that we're breathing with these people for a few moments, wishing them strength and support in dealing with their problems. And now let's broaden and expand our awareness to include all life everywhere. So we're staying centered and grounded, but the circumference of awareness becomes very, very broad and open. We can reflect that there are 7 billion human beings on the planet. And deep down, they're very much like you. They are breathing, thinking, feeling. They tend to resist the unwanted, and they tend to cling on to the pleasant. And this leads to all kinds of contraction, all kinds of difficulties of one sort or another. This plays out uniquely in our individual lives, but the tendencies are universal. So let's have a sense as we sit here of everything breathing, everything arising, everything passing away. Feeling connected with all the other human beings, all the other creatures, breathing in and out, just like us, turning away from pain, running after pleasure. breathing in and out a breath of empathy, a breath of connection, and wishing everyone well. As we sit just here and breathe. And as we come close to the end of our meditation, let's think about what we're moving on to after the practice. Whatever it might be, let's form an intention to bring an awareness into our daily life. Whatever we're going to do next, we can be aware of those tendencies to grasp after pleasure, to try and get rid of anything that makes us uncomfortable, to contract against pain or discomfort. If we are aware, if we know what we're thinking, we know what we're feeling, we know what our body is feeling, then on that basis, we can choose how we respond. We can choose to respond rather than react to all the different moments. All of us tend to get lost in our activities, our thinking. We get stressed and often act thoughtlessly. But perhaps we can make an intention to wake up so that in that difficult moment, we're aware. In that moment, we can choose to stop, to pause, to breathe, to come back to the body. In that moment, we can choose how we want to re-engage with our activities. We can choose a life of openness, of awareness, of choice. A life where we breathe fully throughout the day, rather than contracting around our breathing. And we can see the effect that this has on ourselves and the people that we come into relationship with. If we are more open and aware, more gentle perhaps, then this will have an effect on all the people we come into contact with. And then they will change a little bit, and they will be a little bit different when they go on to interact with others. And this is where awareness practice can be really powerful in changing not only our own lives, but the lives of people around us. So with this intention, very gently, we can bring the meditation to a close. Beginning to move the body how we want to, maybe stretching a bit, and then gently re-engaging with our next activity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
My pleasure. If there are any last questions before we leave each other, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Look, thank you again, Sue, for a lovely teaching and for some really nice thoughts and some inspiring ideas about how to deal with difficulties. And thanks to
My
everybody.
pleasure. Thank you.
For,
Thanks.
yeah.
Very good
So
to
good
be with
meet-
you all. Thank you.
Good evening. May you be safe and well, and hopefully see you next week. Take care.
Okay.